On a start to the week that picks up with a counter note to how Friday ended last week in a scene that was really truly watched around the world, whether there were deliverables or not. Tonight, we begin with this extraordinary scene at the White House. European leaders gathering for this kind of show of support, but also what many European leaders and governments that have foreign policies at a kind of a crossroads or a disagreement with the Trump foreign policy doctrines, what they view as a kind of allied intervention. They want to persuade President Trump to continue to stand up for democracy, whatever aspects of the NATO alliance they can convince him are valuable, and quite specifically, the defense and livelihood of the man standing to the president's right who demonstrates the current longest and many say most courageous stand against the aggressive invasion by Vladimir Putin. Now, this began with Ukraine President Zelensky arriving for these talks. This is the first Oval Office meeting those two leaders have had since the now infamous and unusual clash they held before the cameras inside the Oval Office. Now, whatever you think of Donald Trump's policies and style, it is not enough to go through the world repeating the same view when the facts or situations change. And so while many people allied with Ukraine are still very critical of what Trump did on Friday, seeming to give Putin the world stage without getting anything back, and his overall approach to this war, in contrast to these two men's last infamous meeting, today was diplomatic, at times even cordial and warm. Some of that because of Zelensky's effort, which of course reflects every talent and energy he has to do whatever he can to move Donald Trump, to move this leader of the United States towards Ukraine's side right now. But it was, in all ways, a more traditional and more cordial meeting. Both leaders also discussed how the next step in ending this war, which Russia started, must ultimately mean some step towards a ceasefire and some sort of direct diplomacy with Friday's summit star, Vladimir Putin.
I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilateral.
We are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral.
I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat.
The trilat, as it's known in shorthand at Foggy Bottom in the State Department, is those three countries together. And again, while there are many people critical of Donald Trump's approach here, he doesn't have to hold meetings with anyone. Bookending Friday's unusual summit with today's more traditional White House diplomacy, one-on-one with Zelensky and then meeting with the other leaders, does reflect a kind of a balancing. As to those leaders, it was France, UK, and some other big European nations, kind of a NATO light style gathering, emphasizing across the board that they want to stand up to Putin, who is a dictator, and behind Ukraine as it fights on and on, year after year, for its survival.
We are all united here with Ukraine on this.
The bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided.
It's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine.
That's the view from those other leaders who are close to it and who have a very real-world sense of the way that Vladimir Putin seeks to dominate the theater of foreign policy that they occupy. Now, at one point, Trump paused the meeting to step out and call Putin. Throughout the day, Trump also talked about his confidence in Vladimir Putin on all this. And then there was what appeared to be a hot mic moment, something that everyone in politics or media or any mic'd activity knows about, which is there are rules and regimens, especially at these kind of summits, because the leaders want to sometimes say things into the mic to the world and other times very clearly not. So what we saw, we're going to show you, it appeared to be something that Donald Trump didn't necessarily want to say to the world, but he was heard discussing that the Russian leader Putin does, in his estimation, still want a deal.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds.
As crazy as it sounds. We are joined now by Rick Stengel, former Undersecretary of State under President Obama, and Elise Labott, longtime foreign correspondent, host of the Cosmopolitics podcast. Welcome to both of you. Rick, walk us through what matters about the gathering today. And at the risk of oversimplifying, maybe Friday was a little more pageantry and today had a little more, at least, meat on the bone publicly, because we could hear the leaders talk more. What is to be understood from that shift from Friday to today?
So, Ari, I'm going to begin where you ended with the Trump quote, as crazy as it sounds, because
Sure.
I just want to pause for a second and talk about how unorthodox, i.e. crazy, the whole day is. The fact that it starts with Zelensky arriving and holding a press conference before they've had a conversation. This has now become sort of normalized behavior. This is extraordinarily dumb and terrible negotiating because you're giving your position away in advance. It puts whoever you're talking to in a horrible position. And this has now become a kind of foundation of Trump negotiation. It's poetic and ironic that all of these European leaders came over. I think it's great to describe it as an intervention, which is what it is. But remember, all of this started with the idea back in 2014 that Ukraine wanted to become part of Europe and maybe eventually part of the European Union. And Yanukovych, the president, was overruled by Putin. He fled. The demonstrations started. And then Russia annexed Crimea. That's the genesis of all of this. And by the way, that's why this makes Putin nervous, because Putin has spent his career doing other things, trying to keep the U.S. separate from Europe, to cleave between the two. And now you have all these European leaders. And by the way, that's why it's an intervention, because they said, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be away from the United States. We need to help Zelensky. And by the way, they can be very helpful to Zelensky because they can take a position that he can then say the Europeans are forcing on me and I can go back to the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainian public is not going to go for a land swap.
Yeah. And you look at that discussion. Does Putin get even more land? Does he get rewarded, whether it was the world stage Friday, Elise, or a wider perception that he's really good at this? And again, to be clear, if you put aside the oddities of the Trump era, Vladimir Putin had his way with other leaders and Democratic administrations to the point that people said we need a reset. And there he goes again. And prior, more traditional Republican presidents, I believe, those of us old enough to remember Bush saying, he looked into his eyes and he's a good man.
Into his eyes and saw his soul.
Saw his soul. Thank you. Even better memory than me. And yet at the home front, as this has absorbed from Friday night, there are plenty of people saying, what was Trump getting and the United States by proxy getting out of Friday? So I want to play that view on Fox for you and then get your view on everything tonight.
The way that it felt in the room was not good. It did not seem like things went well, and it seemed like Putin came in and steamrolled, got right into what he wanted to say, and got his photo next to the president and then left.
It was clear not much was accomplished. No ceasefire, no details, no questions from the press.
We do have a person on the other side, up to now, hasn't made a single concession of any consequence.
Elise?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You don't need to have people like Rick Stengel talk about it. Listen to Trump's own base on Fox News talk about how he didn't get anything. Look, Ari, this didn't even need to be a summit. It could have been a phone call, because everyone knew, I don't really think Trump went into that meeting understanding that Putin wasn't ready for a ceasefire. He wasn't ready to make a deal. I think he wasn't really served by his envoy, Steve Witkoff. And I don't think the world rehabilitated. He didn't rehabilitate Putin in the eyes of the world. They still see Putin for who it is. It might have rehabilitated him at home. I think, if anything, it hurt Trump more than it helped Putin. But listen, today, I think Trump went into that meeting with a little confidence with Putin. He was talking about wanting a ceasefire, talking about consequences. And then, as that Fox correspondent said, he got steamrolled. And, it's not the first U.S. president to be steamrolled. But I think Trump was intimidated by Putin. And he's talking about, I don't think a ceasefire is a good idea. Ari, let's just be honest. He couldn't get the ceasefire. It's not that he doesn't want it. It's not that he wouldn't take it. He can't get it. So now he's trying to spin it around. I think that Zelensky handled himself well today. I think he was, as you said, kind of on his best behavior, brought that letter from his wife to Melania Trump. He wore a suit. I think the Europeans, as much as they were coming to support Zelensky, as Rick said, I think they're also coming to back Trump up. to give Trump the confidence to say to him, and I'm sure that was in the meeting, we've got your back. We are united. You heard, I don't remember, I couldn't see the back of his head saying, it's Team US and Team Europe. We're one team together. And I think that Trump, as much as Zelensky needs it, Trump needs it as well.
Rick, how about that point and the fact of geostrategy, which you've worked on, reported for a long time, but also done it inside the State Department, that these other countries don't have the luxury of thinking about a midterm or resistance strategies. They must deal with the U.S. as it is. And it's a Trump administration in the middle of what has become a very protracted war.
Yes, I think Elisa's point was super smart. What the Europeans are coming to give Trump some support, some ballast for a position that may be against what Putin wants. I mean, again, my head was shaking today just where an American president says, you know, I'm going to have these conversations with you, but then let me get on the horn and talk to the Russian president about it and see, you know, I'm calling my daddy to find out what's going on.
He did say the same thing. I'm sorry. He did say the same thing to Putin about Zelensky that said, I'm going to get on the horn. Of course, he didn't call him in the middle of the meeting.
But did he?
Like he
but
did
at
with
least
the Europeans. But
yeah. At least did he call him daddy?
He might have. He might have.
The fact
Go ahead, Rick. Go ahead, Rick.
I don't know how. I mean, and obviously Donald Trump is obsessed with appearing strong. I don't understand how it appears strong to have to call the Russian president and say, hey, here, let me tell you what's going on and what's your reaction to it.